so when we talk about the American Railroad, you usually hear about ingenuity, right?
Yeah.
Risk-taking, uniting the country. It's always framed as this great engine of American progress.
That's the standard story, yeah. But the sources we've been digging into, well, they show a foundation built on something else entirely. Systematic exploitation, yes, but also the incredible and often overlooked genius of foundational Black Americans, FBAs. People descended from the enslaved right here.
Right. It really reframes the whole thing, doesn't it?
It does. And our mission in this deep dive is really to unpack how FBA labor and, just as importantly, their intellectual property provided the indispensable structure, often totally uncompensated, but it drove industrial growth and fundamentally shaped modern corporate finance in the U.S.
Okay, let's get into that financial part first. Because these railroads were massive projects. How were they funded early on when capital was supposedly scarce?
Well, looking at the antebellum South, the answer is pretty stark. Chattel slavery. Almost every early Southern railroad relied on it heavily.
And this wasn't just like incidental labor.
No, not at all. The sources are clear. It was an economic rationale. The cost of getting enslaved labor was just much lower than hiring free workers. Think about that. It's a direct, huge capital transfer. The initial costs, the really hard physical work taken off the books of these new corporations.
So slavery essentially acted as the unpaid startup capital.
Yeah.
The equity stake, but taken from people, not given by investors.
Precisely. You look at companies that were predecessors to, say, CSX today, they were renting enslaved people, sometimes for up to $200 a season.
Which is what, almost $4,000 today?
Around that, yeah. So imagine the advantage. Access to essential, often skilled labor for tiny fraction of what it should have cost. It massively lowered their initial risk.
But that structure, that reliance on forced cheap labor, it didn't just end in 1865 with emancipation.
No, it morphed. The demand was still there, so the system adapted.
Yeah.
We see the rise of convict leasing, equally devastating, really.
How did that work? How did they ensure the labor supply?
The state basically stepped in. Southern states used that loophole in the 13th Amendment, the one allowing involuntary servitude if you've committed a crime. They passed black codes, laws targeting things like vagrancy, maybe loitering, minor stuff, often selectively enforced.
So designed to arrest black men specifically?
Overwhelmingly, yes. To quickly fill labor quotas needed by private companies, especially the railways, it was state-sponsored forced labor, essentially.
And the sources suggest this wasn't minor. It was critical.
Absolutely critical. Take Alabama, for instance. In 1898, something like 73%, nearly three-quarters of the state's entire annual revenue came from leasing out convicts.
Wow.
Yeah. That provided this massive, ongoing, dangerous labor subsidy for building railroads well into the 1930s.
So connecting the dots, government policy actively minimized the financial risk for these private railroad companies by supplying almost free labor long after slavery was officially over.
That's the financial architecture, built on coercion. But the sources also push us to look beyond just the physical labor. There was real genius involved in making the railroads actually work.
Do you mean the operational side?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Synchronization, safety, things foundational Black Americans were central to. We absolutely have to talk about the Gandhi dancers.
Right. The track maintenance crews, mostly African-American.
And their genius wasn't just brute strength, it was coordination. Management strategy, really. They had to keep those tracks perfectly aligned at that precise 4 feet, 8.5 inches. They used these call and response lining songs. It was rhythmic, synchronized. It turned individual effort into this incredibly precise, unified mechanical force needed to adjust heavy rails safely and quickly.
That's fascinating. There's operational know-how. And then there's the actual technological innovation too, right? Making the trains themselves better.
Yes. Two huge examples stand out. Elijah McCoy, his automatic lubricator, patented in 1872.
The real McCoy.
That's supposedly where the phrase comes from. Because his invention worked so well, it let trains run faster, longer, with fewer stops for lubrication, massively boosted efficiency and profit.
Huge impact.
And the other, Andrew Jackson Beard, his improved automatic car coupler from 1897. Before that, coupling railroad cars was horrifically dangerous. Crushing injuries, deaths were common. Beard's invention automated that process. It drastically improved worker safety. And, not incidentally, it also cut down on corporate liability for those accidents.
Safety and efficiency, both critical. Okay, so let's pull this all together for the listener. What's the takeaway here?
Well, you have foundational Black Americans providing really three crucial pillars for America's first big business, the railroads. First, the foundational physical capital through enslaved. and then convict labor. Second, the operational genius, the management, like the Gandhi dancers, ensuring safety and precision.
And third, the technological brilliance. Inventors like McCoy and Beard solving fundamental problems.
Exactly. And the economic engine that built modern rail networks companies still around today, like Norfolk Southern, CSX, it's directly traceable to those lines built and capitalized through this enormous uncompensated transfer of wealth and labor.
So the provocative thought for you, the listener, is this. America's huge leap forward, its industrial and financial growth spurt, was possible because foundational Black Americans effectively absorbed the real cost. They provided the initial unpaid equity, the risk capital, for the entire enterprise. And that means the very foundation of our modern economy, our financial systems, rests heavily on this historical economic transfer. A transfer that mostly has never really been acknowledged, let alone accounted for. Something to think about.
All right, now. Yeah.